Tatler magazine in London, which was a glossy magazine, a monthly magazine, which I'd sort of taken on when it was an ailing sort of shiny sheet, really, and I turned it into this kind of attitudinal glossy that was a kind of the Princess Di sort of covered her up and down. And when I got to New York, I'd been an editor in London, but I felt it was just overwhelmingly, it was so big and it was so materialistic and so wealthy and affluent and noisy and all the things you feel when you first come to New York.
Yes.
I found it thrilling.
Yeah.
But I also did find it very daunting at first, and there's a lot of my diary is about trying to adjust to being English in New York and trying to sort of learn how to be a New Yorker, if you like, and wondering whether I can cope with it, and at the same time being wildly, madly excited by it and
Yes.
attracted by it, because I was a young woman who had got this huge chance, and it was the most thrilling chance you could possibly imagine, which was to be the editor at Vanity Fair.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You were 29 when you were first being wooed, which I guess seems younger and younger every day, to me at least. Were you thinking, I can't believe this is happening, or did it just almost seem like the natural progression of events?
Well, I really wanted that job, and they'd first sort of identified me at Tatler because Tatler had been bought by Condé Nast, which owned Condé Nast magazines, which owned Tatler and all of these Glamour, all of these big Vogue, all the big glossy magazines. And they first came to me to ask if I would come and be a consultant in New York to help the editor that they'd put in after the first editor failed. So there was a first launch editor and it bombed, and then they put in another editor who also turned out to be a failure. But they'd asked me to come and help him at first because they didn't want to fire the second editor. And so I came in the summer first as a consultant, and I had no thought that I could really take the editorship over. I just was sort of excited to be asked to do this. It seemed like a huge thing, this Vanity Fair in New York. But I soon realized that he couldn't do it, and I should. And it sort of grew on me with a sort of mounting realization that I actually knew what to do with this magazine, and he didn't. And so I went up at the end of the consultancy, and they said to me, we want you to do it. We see that you should do it.
Right.
But we want you to work with him. And I said no, which was pretty cocky of me, I realized, because I basically thought if I come and help him, he'll succeed, because I'll do the job.
Yes.
And I'm not going to have that happen. I wanted to have the job.
Yeah.
And so when I look back on that, that was a fairly, it was quite a cocky, as I say, thing to do.
Yeah.
I said goodbye and I went back to London. It was a big gamble, really. And I thought I'll sit and wait and see what happens. And then I thought I'd blown it.
Then you were sitting there having doubts.
I thought I thought, why did I do that? I should have just grabbed this with two hands.
Yeah.
And the months went by, and the months went by, and then after about 7 months, I got the call, would I come to New York for an interview? And I know that you don't get invited to fly across the Atlantic just to have, to say
a courtesy interview.
So I came and I was offered it, and I took it over straight away. And so I did choke at first, but in some ways those months were a good thing for me, because they really made me think about how much I wanted it and what I would do with it when I got it.
Yes. Were you reading it? You must have been reading the magazine.
I was, and I knew they just had got it wrong. It was a muddle visually. It looked old-fashioned. They were trying to emulate the New Yorker at that time. They wanted to be the New Yorker with pictures.
Yeah.
But I knew
that was what you created.
Yeah, and I realized I wanted to do a magazine that had the glamour and excitement of the original magazine in the 30s, but also had the kind of journalism that had deepened since then in magazines like Rolling Stone and New York Magazine, and bring these forms together in a sense so that you would have a high-low mix, if you like,
the high-low,
of this, glamour and excitement, but at the same time, really good journalism and deep content. And it took me time to get that, but we did.
Well, I think it's safe to say that you were viral before viral was even a good thing. You had such a great sense, and there's a couple of covers I'd love to talk about the backstory. The naked and pregnant Demi Moore, the Reagans dancing, and of course the cover story that you wrote on Princess Di. So let's talk about how you got those shots.
Well, I'll talk about them in the order they happened, right? Because the Reagans dancing was really the first big breakthrough of Vanity Fair. Because when I took it over, it was in March. We had to, the first 8 months were really a struggle. I didn't get it right instantly, and I knew I wasn't getting it right, but it was failing. It was about to close, and I had to fight for its survival. So I was trying to do many things on many fronts, and I knew what it needed. It needed to have a big news rush of something that people would pay attention to. And we got access to photograph the Reagans. And I took with me Harry Benson to the White House, and the great photographer who has photographed many a president. And Harry was brought with him this boombox, which certainly dates me, but he brought with him a tape of Frank Sinatra singing Nancy with the Laughing Face. And he set up his boombox, we set up the screen at the White House in the Mac room, and we were going to wait for the Reagans to come and get their photograph taken on their way to this state dinner with the president of Argentina. And they came by, and you heard them rumble of Reagan's laugh. He's in a black tie, and she's in her one of those beaded, gowns that she used to wear in there. And Harry Benson hits the boombox, and we hear Frank Sinatra singing Nancy with a Laughing Face, and Nancy stops and she goes, "Oh, Ronnie, they're playing our song." It really was like a B movie. And he said, "Honey, let's dance." And the two of them started doing this foxtrot around the room. I mean, they were just going as if there was not a care in the world, as if we weren't there. It was astounding. And then Harry Benson was jumping up and down, taking pictures, 3 cameras. He's very excitable. He's very Scottish, Harry Benson. And he was going, "Mr. Reagan, Mr. President, give your wife a kiss." And so he leans in, and he does, and he gives them, they have this sort of smooch, which I know is going to be the most amazing pictures. And I'm thinking to myself, tee-hee, we have this fantastic shoot that's going to make an enormous difference. And it did. We put the dancing on the cover and the kiss inside, and called it the Reagan kiss, and it just went, as you say, viral before there was viral. So that was a huge lift. A really big lift.
And did you know, it sounds like you knew right away.
Right away, because it was just so cinematic. And I mean, the Reagans were geniuses because they had this ability to create images that collude with national mood. They knew, we wanted that kind of optimism at that time.
Yeah.
And it was just this lovely, optimistic sort of Hollywood couple. It was just, they knew how to create images. I mean, I'm sure they must have understood what they were doing, but they couldn't have planned it because
they didn't know about the boombox.
Because they didn't know about it. And they
did
didn't
you know? Well, you must have seen his boombox. Did you?
Well, I didn't know he was going to what he really had in mind.
Yeah.
I just thought that he was just being kind of corny by having kind of background music. I didn't realize that he was. I don't think he knew they were going to do that.
Yeah.
He just wanted to put them in a good mood.
Yeah. What kind of negotiation goes on to get access like that? Like, how did you get that?
Everything is social in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go through channels, but that's going to take you months and months.
Yeah.
And we would never probably got on agenda with them.
Yeah.
Because we weren't actually really at all hot right now.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering.
I had somebody on the staff who was a friend of a Hollywood producer who knew Nancy, who had dinner with them. It was like that. And so it got through, and the message got. And she, I think she made all those kind of decisions. Really, I think she liked the idea that we were doing them as a couple, which at that time wasn't being done a lot. It was always about him or her, but no one was. We were doing them as a couple, and we had William Buckley wrote the piece about why their marriage works so well. So that they felt that was a bit of a carrot too, to say we have F. Buckley to do the piece.
And at that time, since I'm having trouble remembering how things were before the internet, when something was so successful, what did that translate into? Magazine sales, obviously.
I mean, it gave us the newsstand lift. I mean, we were on every single TV show, everything. And it really put the fact that Vanity Fair had been cast off its sort of shadow of failure.
Yeah.
But you have to do things, in threes, for it to really work. And we followed it up very quickly with a brilliant piece that Dominic Dunn, who I discovered, who was this failing film producer who I got to write a piece, and it turned out that he was an amazing writer. And he wrote the piece about the Klaus von Bülow, that big social murder that was happening, alleged murder, where Klaus von Bülow was allegedly had tried to kill his wife Sunny with an insulin injection. And what Dominic Dunn, again, I mean, his connections got us right into the heart of that story. We got a photo shoot with von Bülow on the eve of the trial, and I assigned Helmut Newton, the great fashion photographer, to take that picture because I just thought Helmut was just so damn kinky. And I knew that he would love Klaus von Bülow, and he persuaded Klaus von Bülow to put on. He said, "Let's go into your closet and choose something for you to wear."
Yeah.
and chose a black leather
I know.
outfit.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're about to be tried for murder, you know, dressing in a sort of satanic, sort of S&M rockers outfit wouldn't have been your first choice, but guess what? Well, Miller puts it on. And Dominic writes this incredible piece, but this picture of Miller in black leather just went, again, it went everywhere. So that was the second big lift. And then the third big lift actually was the Princess Diana.
Oh, that you wrote.
Yes.
So talk about that.
Demi. Demi was quite good. The cover with Princess Diana, which is called The Mouse That Roared, that was the piece that I wrote, which was breaking the news that the Prince and Princess of Wales marriage was in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that was ever news now feels like, of course, we all know it, but it wasn't known then.
That's hard to, you're right.
It wasn't known then, and I had, because of my Tatler contacts, because Tatler was a society magazine, really, I knew lots of people who were working in the palace, you know, and they kept telling me that everything was not as we thought, you know, that it was really bad scene backstage, and that Diana and Charles were getting on horribly. They had terrible scenes, you know, things were going really bad. So I wrote this piece, The Mouse That Roared, about how everything was going on with the Wales' marriage. And again, it really went big time.
Wasn't there a quote that ran in London that was sort of out of context or something? Didn't people...
That was a different story. The Wales piece caused such a ruction that Diana and Charles did something they never did before or since, except when they got engaged, which was they went on television to refute it on the BBC. At which point I knew it was true. Right? The palace only ever denies things that are true.
That are true.
And it did, you know, and obviously it made a lot of noise, but it was right. And actually at the end of Diana's life, as it turned out, I didn't think it would be, but in July of 1997, I had lunch with her in the Four Seasons with Anna Wintour when she came to auction her dresses at Christie's.
Oh, right, yeah.
And, you know, and she said to me, you know, you were right about that.
She said that?
Yeah, well, she was, and she laughed and she said, you know, you got it right. And I said, well, I know Mum, because by that time they divorced.
Yeah.
But she was very moving at that lunch, actually.
She was talking about her loneliness, wasn't she?
Yeah, she really was. It was a very poignant thing, because having known her when she was this charming, shy, sort of little mouse, really, who was ravishingly pretty, but just so shy and so in Charles's sort of in awe of Prince Charles.
Yeah.
When she was engaged, when I first met her, by that time, you know, she was this unbelievable celebrity diva. You know, I mean, just the thing about Diana was she was so tall that you don't realize in a way as you saw her, because she didn't really see how tall she was. When she was in her high heels, it was she was really tall. It was like a supermodel. And these enormous blue eyes, you know, and I mean, she was such a beauty. But she was very sad, and she said, you know, I hate August. This was in July. And I said, I hate August because the boys go and stay with their father in Balmoral, and I'm by myself. And she said, it's difficult because nobody wants me to stay because the press makes everybody crazy.
Wow.
And she said they want to, you know, they go through their dustbins and their garbage and they ruin their holidays, and so it's very hard to have me to stay. And I really thought about that when, you know, she died in the Almont-Tamel in Paris, because she was only really on that boat because she wanted to be somewhere safe. I mean, she took up that invitation because there was this boat, she thought there were boats and planes and bodyguards, you know, that she would be protected. And of course it was the absolute opposite.
Oh, that's really sad.
Yeah.
She seems like she must have been a very compelling figure. I mean, obviously to the world, but also to you, because you wrote a whole book about her.
Yeah.
What so interested you?
Because she, I mean, that was a story. It was just an incandescent story, really. I mean, it had everything. It had a beautiful young woman who became a princess, whose husband wasn't in love with her. The whole world was in love with her, but her husband wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, she died 36, at the top of her height of her beauty. Yeah. In a tragic way, you know, heartbroken about everything that had happened.
Yeah.
You know, that story there's very few stories that have that most
You're right, that has all the
extraordinary elements. So she always did fascinate me, and so on. But just, you know, not to go on, but you asked me about Demi Moore, so I'll just get to that. Demi Moore was later. You know, Demi Moore was at the end of my time at Vanity Fair. That was in 1991, I think it was. And that really came about because I just had my second child. I was feeling very sort of mutinous about maternity clothes.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
and feeling, the whole business of being a pregnant mother at work was just such a hassle, the whole thing. And so in my mind, and when we learned she was pregnant, we'd already arranged to do the photo shoot with her. Annie Leibovitz and I were talking about what we would do with the cover. And it's interesting, at that time, when if a star was pregnant, you would tend to just photograph her. You know, you would say, okay, we'll just do a headshot because she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And I said to Annie, why don't we show that she's pregnant? But you know, so we'll put her in a tight cocktail dress or something. So Annie loved that idea, and tight cocktail dress was procured. Went off to take the pictures with Demi. And so she comes back with the pictures, and they're great. And I look at the picture, and I said they're great. But Annie has that face which says, "I haven't given everything up." You know, and I look at her and I say, "Is this it? Is this the shoot?" She goes, "Well, there was this other picture." So I said, "Well, what is it?" And she said, "Well, this picture was really just for Demi and Bruce Willis. You know, I did it for them as a kind of private, intimate picture, and I don't think they're going to want, but why don't I just show it to you?" So I said, "Let me see it." And of course, there it was, Demi Moore, naked, pregnant. I went absolutely ballistic. I said, "This is just unbelievable. We have to have it, we have to have it, we have to have it." Annie gets on the phone with Demi and persuades her to do it. I then had to persuade the circulation department to let me do it. They are aghast, you know, I'm going to do this. And they said, "We have to ask Walmart if they will put it on the newsstand." Now Walmart says, "No, absolutely not. It was a piece of pornography as far as they were concerned." And they weren't going to do it. So, not to be defeated, I said, "Let's shrink wrap it. Let's just do it in shrink wrap, and we'll just put it with we'll put it with Penthouse and Playboy, and that's it." So that's what we did. We shrink wrapped it. And I remember the night sort of before the magazine dropped, I said to my managing agent, I said, "I wonder whether we could get on the Today Show with this cover." And of course, it just went. I mean, you know, as you say, it went really big. I mean,
and now every pregnant actress has that shot.
It's still going.
It's still
going. And now having a pregnant, you know, naked shot is a sort of rite of passage for.
Right, you're not anybody unless you've had naked pictures.
And in fact, the last one I think was last August with Serena Williams.
Yeah, she did hers.
She did it too. So that was. I did feel we struck a blow for them with that.
I think so.
Because we liberated. I don't think maternity clothes. I think it killed them actually.
I didn't realize I used a name for killing the maternity clothes.
You remember those clothes?
Yeah, they were terrible.
I don't think people wear maternity clothes anymore. They just think they can show their.
Yeah, well, I guess, but the flip side of that is to say you're never in this society off duty. Like even now when you're pregnant, you need to look hot.
Yeah, that's right.
Even when you're
the other way
dead,
of looking at it.
You know, that's
unfortunately we don't all have Demi Moore's body, but.
Let's go back to just one quick sec with Princess Di. What do you think the big royal story is now? I mean, I saw a headline the other day that said princesses at war. Like they're trying to drum up this controversy between, you know, competition between.
That was just inevitable, wasn't it?
Of course.
I know. And the thing is, if they keep doing it, it'll be true, you know, because it will just get so irritating for Kate. I do think that that's a tricky area for Meghan Markle. You know, she's. It's very difficult to sort of dial back heat. You know, when you are.
Oh, interesting.
And she and Harry are now just the sort of the number one.
Yeah, they're just exciting and vibrant, right?
Very exciting and vibrant. And Prince William is the next king after Charles, you know, so in the end, Kate Middleton is going to be queen, right? She's going to be queen. Yeah. She has to wait for Charles, but she's going to be queen. And there's nothing really no bigger deal in a sense than being the queen. And so therefore, you know, queens don't really like being upstage. You could argue they can't be upstage. Yeah. But one of the questions that really became very difficult for Diana was there really was a lot of jealousy of her in the royal family, you know, because there's a poor old Princess Anne, Prince Charles's sister. She slogged around doing charity work for years. You know, she has gone to dreary places, and she's gone to hospitals, and she has been such a good egg, you know, about everything. And you know, she can't get arrested. I mean, he wants to take a picture, and nobody ever gives her any press. And all Diana had to do was kind of, you know, appear in a hospital ward or something, whereas press was there. And it really did. And I think even the Queen, you know, she supposedly would never kind of bother about such things. But I was told that she got very irritated when she did her opening of Parliament one year. And everybody, the next day, all the pictures were of Diana's new updo. And, you know, if you've gone to Parliament in a gold coach and you've opened up Parliament and you've done your thing, and then it's about
someone's hair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Someone's hair. You start
You're
to
the
say,
air, but it's somebody's hair.
right, it gets tricky.
In your diaries, you do talk about moments when you're insecure and struggling, and I'd love to talk about that in a minute, but there's also just very early on, of course, that great Tina Brown, the character Tina Brown, that great confidence. And you were really among the first women to break through the boys' media club. And that put you in contact with a lot of high-profile men, and some of whom have now been toppled by Me Too. And of course, Harvey Weinstein wooed you to work to co-found Talk magazine. So I was wondering if you could talk about what it was like working with him and how
It wasn't my greatest career move, I will say.
Well, it's a good magazine.
Well, it was. I left the New Yorker in 1998, where I went after Vanity Fair. After 7 years, I left the New Yorker, and at the invitation of Harvey Weinstein to start a magazine with him that would be both books, films, and a magazine. It would be more than a magazine. And that was why I left the New Yorker, because I wanted to do that with the New Yorker, actually. And they didn't want to do that, I think, wrongly, and I think I've been proved correct that they should have done, because that brand extension,
that's right,
was something I was arguing about doing, and they didn't want to do it. So Harvey came to me and he wanted to do what I wanted to do, right? Except start something new. So he was, people forget that he was extremely persuasive and charming when he wanted something.
Sure.
And the trouble is that once you're working with him, it's Jekyll and Hyde. It's all about the romance. And then when you get there, he was extraordinarily difficult to work with. He never sexually harassed me, but he was so volcanic and explosive and abusive. And it was really a change. I spent 18 years working at Condé Nast magazines for Cy Newhouse, who was, a real gentleman. He was capricious. He was at times, very tough, but he was always, civilized, charming. Not charming always, but always a civilized. There was an atmosphere there, great respect, shall we say, anyway, for women. There was never any of that kind of stuff there. And so to go to work for Harvey was like, it really was like the Hall of the Mountain Kings. It was just totally. It was a huge mistake. Within about a week of going there, I knew I'd made the most colossal mistake. But I had to live with it. I had to eat it because I did it. And I then tried to make it work. And the worst thing that he would do, which I now understand why he would do it so much, but he would constantly go around town assigning people to write articles for the magazine, who were people who were trying to write gossip items about him. That was about stopping those gossip items, So it was about saying, oh, you don't want to write about me, we'll give you a contract to talk.
Oh, really?
You come and write pieces. So then it was my problem, right?
Oh, so you didn't have an article. Did you know why articles were being assigned?
So I would, of course I would refuse, right? Which then put me in, a terrible situation. Right? He was furious with me, but so was the writer, right?
Oh my gosh.
So it was like this went on, and it was so difficult, all of it. It was just the tip of the iceberg with him, how hard it was to work with him.
Yeah.
But, he also, at the time that I went to work with him, it wasn't the Harvey we see now. It was the Harvey who'd just done Shakespeare in Love,
all those great
films.
Yeah.
And that was what attracted me. Was
of course, all the ones you were watching.
All the women
he had produced.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange story.
Has he contacted you? Or?
No. Who knows what he's doing.
Yeah. All right, I'm proud that we've gotten to this point in the evening without mentioning Donald Trump. But I'm sorry, I'm now going to bring him up. So you excerpted Art of the Deal in Vanity Fair.
I did.
And you liked it, and talk about that and what before he curdled the earlier Donald Trump. That's your word.
Well, Trump runs through this book like a recurring virus. He submitted the Art of the Deal, his publisher submitted the Art of the Deal for us to read. And actually, my staff didn't much like it, but I was interested enough. I said, let me take it home for the weekend. And I have to say, I write in my diary that I feel that it has a terrific voice. I like the voice in the diary. And I said, you feel you've been nose to nose with a con man. But it's, I said, it's BS, but it's authentic BS. And I said, I think America will like nothing better. Because I just found it. There was something about it that was this voice.
It
was I found very beguiling, as many have since. And so we extracted the book, and I was very glad I did, because of course it became a huge hit.
Of course, yeah.
And so I was in his very good books at first, you know, because I'd done this, and I sat and ate with him. I was introduced to him at a dinner. In fact, Ivana Trump was all over New York, and I got to know her quite well. And so I was at this dinner which Ivana had Anne Getty of San Francisco had hosted, and the Trumps were there. Trump was very uptown in those days, which he stopped being as soon as the Ivana divorce happened. But in those days, he used to be out there in a dinner jacket. You'd see him at first nights and something. He was very
the opera, even though we complained about it.
He did. So he was there, and he was 2 doors down from me, you know. And my dinner partner wasn't really talking to me, and his wasn't really talking to him. So we started to kind of bounce it back and forth across the artichokes, you know, with talking to one another like this, you know. And he went like, "Oh, ha, Tina, you know, what do you think about me being on the cover of Newsweek?" I said, "Well, it's very nice that you're on the cover." He says, "What do you think is better, Time or Newsweek?" I said, "Well, I think Time actually is better." I could have had Time. I could have had Time. I could have had them both. I could have them both. And it's so funny now to realize, you know, he was obsessed about that then.
Yes.
He's obsessed about it now.
Yes.
He said, you know, Vanna made me go to the opera. You know, 2 hours, nothing to eat. You know, it's like, I said, never again, never again. So I was amused. I thought he was very, very funny.
Yeah.
And, but then, it was after the divorce, like a couple of years later, that he began to change. I actually think people haven't quite realized the pivot of
please.
The divorce and the bankruptcies together. And actually, I think Ivana was more important to him than he's ever let on, in the sense that I think she was some kind of an organizing force somehow behind him. And so when she was out of the picture, he got more and more out of control, and the bankruptcies really were, you know, we revealed in the magazine, I mean, we covered those contextually about the fact that he was no longer what he said he was, that the whole Golden Tower sham was, you know, over and he was bankrupt. Yeah. So that we wrote about, and he was absolutely livid about that, absolutely livid about it. And Marie Branner did a really good piece about him, where she talked about all this, and she also wrote that he had a copy of Hitler's speeches on his desk, and that detail went really viral.
Yes.
You know, it went everywhere. And he denied it, he did it, but it was absolutely true, she didn't make it up. And so a few months later, she was at a dinner, one of those black tie functions, and she was sitting having her dinner, and she felt something cold and wet down her back. And she looked up and she thought it was the waiter who dropped wine on her. And then she sees it's Trump. Trump has thrown wine over her, and he then, you know, has kind of rushed off across the room so she wouldn't say
so childish.
And there he was. It was ridiculous. He scuttled off like this kind of miscreant, and was sitting there canoodling, as I wrote it, with his, what did I say, his blow-up doll, Marla. And it was stunning, because it was just, you know, the idea that you would, he'd still be harboring such fury that he would actually empty a glass of wine down a reporter's back. And then one just realized that he was really changing. And I think something happened, you know, in those years.
That's fascinating.
The bankruptcy, maybe the bankruptcy took him into this kind of internal panic or something, but he never was the same as he was at the beginning, when he was actually quite a sort of New York character of a certain kind that wasn't as malign in a way as he became.
I know. Now, when did Spy magazine start covering him?
Spy was around about the same time.
Yeah.
I think that greatly probably annoyed him.
Yeah, maybe
because he doesn't like being laughed at.
Yeah.
You know? But you know, I guess if he just stayed in business, he would have just seemed to be a particular kind of 80s figure who'd kind of come and gone.
Right.
But Trump Tower was really the gold tower with the waterfall and the funny financing, as it were. It really was the kind of leading indicator of the era when you think about it.
Yeah. So Tina, when I started reading the Vanity Fair's diary, I thought I'm going to underline a few things so I can know what I want to talk about. And soon I was literally underlining every sentence and every page. So I stopped underlining. But there's something I want to read. This sentence, and there's so many like this, but this one kind of actually made me gasp, just because it was so great when I read it. All right, so you have driven through Tuscany to interview a disgraced Tory peer, I think, Lord Lambton. I was picturing you in a sexy convertible. I don't know what kind of car you're actually in.
To know. It's probably a Volkswagen.
Okay. So he had written a piece for Vanity Fair about his home. There was a 400-year-old house that Pope Alexander VI had lived in. And You're feeling very lucky, it seems, that you're getting to see this house. And this is what you wrote. I was reminded about the delightful access a magazine provides. It gives you a license to satisfy curiosity without the rent of social obligation. I love the concept of the rent of social obligation. And I was wondering if you could talk about that, because I was thinking, as you were saying earlier, a lot of access you get is through these social connections. So talk about that tension of getting an interview or access for a photograph because you know the person, but then the coverage isn't always what they want.
Well, I have to say that most of my social energy in the 80s, because that was an immensely, crazily, much, much more than ever it is now, social time. My social energy was always about getting the stories.
Yeah.
You know, I was there because I was working.
Yeah.
And I'm naturally quite introverted, actually. I like to stay, you know, I never go out at the weekends. I like to sit and read my books and hang out and be by the fire and all of that. But if you're a magazine editor, my feeling is you need to be out there, sort of vacuuming it all up,
yeah,
and getting the stories. And I did find that meeting people in those ways allowed me to pick up great leads, which I could then hand to the reporters. Now, when you do that, of course, it's true, you don't always please the people concerned. That was always a bit of a dance, you know, about, and actually, the truth is that I went on persuading Donald Trump to do stories for me, and he fell for it twice. I persuaded him to do the Marie Brenner story, and then when I went to the New Yorker, he decided to kind of forgive me for a bit, and he asked me to breakfast. I remember it was at Trump Tower, and I persuaded him to do a profile for the New Yorker with Mark Singer.
Oh, right.
And Mark Singer's piece, honestly, if you get a chance to look it up, it's there in the New Yorker. It is one of he's actually turned
the description of his hair in that piece.
Oh, it's hysterical.
Yeah.
It's the best piece ever done on Trump, in my view. Yeah. And he turned it into a book. It was hysterical. And he agreed to do it again. And so this time, I knew I'd really blown it. There was nothing I could do to ever get into any sort of situation that I'd blown it. It was two times, you know, but it was worth it because Mark Singer's piece was so great. But yes, I mean, there were times when sometimes I found myself, I always tried to do the piece that I thought was right, in the sense that I would, if the person didn't like it, I also made sure it was a correct and accurate piece.
Yes.
Because sometimes, frankly, news collides with the fact that you like a person very much.
Yes.
And if you're an editor, you've really got to decide, are you an editor or just a socialist?
I was thinking about Sally Quinn.
Right.
And that review of her novel. She'd written a novel in 1986 or 96, a Washington social memoir novel, and talk about what happened.
No, Sally was a good friend, and Ben Bradley was a very close friend. We actually got married in their house.
Yeah.
And Sally published a book, a novel, and I thought that Christopher Buckley would be a very good person to review it, because it was a book about sort of social life in Washington, and I thought, well, Chris Buckley, son of William F. Buckley, you know, he great at social world, etc. Well, he wrote this book piece. He wrote this review that was just hilariously negative, and it was agony when it came in. When he called her book literature, which is pretty bad. And I remember looking at this piece, going frozen, thinking, what am I going to do? You know, this piece is really great. Chris Buckley is a fabulous writer. Sally Quinn is a very good friend. What am I going to do? I had to publish that piece. Now, I made one mistake, I think, which after that I really, really didn't. I mean, I should have probably called her up and said, this piece is coming, but, you know, she wouldn't know, it wouldn't have made a difference in the sense
that she would know.
But she might have known it was coming. So all I did was kind of publish it and sit there waiting for this neutron bomb to go off, which it did. I soon got a telegram.
A telegram?
In those days, disinviting me from Ben's birthday party in his house.
I think we have time. I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we'll have some questions from the audience. I don't know if you know, but Tina has launched just a fantastic podcast. I was begging her to release some more because there's only 4 so far. And
it's called TBD with Tina Brown.
TBD with Tina Brown. It's so interesting. It's like Terry Gross meets the New Yorker Radio Hour. And it's wonderful listening. And so your first interview was with Jill Soloway, who's the creator of Transparent. And Jill had been married to a man, but now she's non-binary and gender non-conforming. And I was really interested, or actually surprised, that you said that you were, as the interview drew closer, you described yourself as being increasingly daunted by the prospect of meeting her. And you also said something that surprised me. You said, I saw someone whose gender journey has truly set them free, and I felt unexpectedly envious. The pursuit of glamour is such a burdensome bore.
Right.
You still do look very glamorous.
No, I mean, I'm definitely into my buzz cut phase. You know, I'm looking now. I just want to be. You know, I thought she was great because she seems to have found a way to just completely sort of jump out of who she was and change herself and embrace a new her.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think a lot of us are burdened by the people we were, or people we wanted to want to be, and don't really want to be anymore, and yet you sort of, out of habit, go on being that person. I think there would be nothing better than to, actually what I really want to do is I want to be stomping around, you know, in thick stockings and country brogues and with tight silver curls, and I don't know, I just, Clemmy Churchill, you know, wouldn't that be nice to have? But she actually, of course, was played by Kristen Scott Thomas, who absolutely divine at all times.
Yes.
So I don't think that really applies. But I think American women are not allowed to age. You know, it's just such a bore. You know?
Yeah, it's a bore. I think
it's just such a bore. Everybody spends all their time
trying to fight it.
Trying to fight it.
Yeah, like tomorrow you should look younger than you did yesterday.
Right.
If you're doing things right. Great. So why don't we have some questions from the audience? I'm sure people have great questions.
Hello.
Hi, Tina. I absolutely love the diaries.
Oh, thank you.
And